Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com. In today's podcast, we're going to be covering Ernst and Young interview questions. These are interview questions that are specific to the Big Four accounting firm Ernst and Young. And they're questions that you're likely to get on an interview when you're interviewing with Ernst and Young. So let's get right into it. Now, the first question you might encounter on an interview with Ernst and Young is, why do you want to work at Ernst and Young? It might seem like a simple question and most people don't even think about it, but it is a question that you are likely to get on your interview. So make sure you prepare for it. And it shouldn't be that hard to answer as long as you've thought ahead of time, because there are tons of reasons why you might want to work at Ernst & Young. One of the obvious reasons that you might want to work at Ernst & Young is that Ernst & Young has a very strong brand. And the reason they have a strong brand is because they are the third largest professional services firm in the world by revenue. And that's a huge reason in and of itself to work there. But you can also mention some other things like that they have the most employees out of the Big Four accounting firms because they continue to hire a lot. And so that is a very strong position that they do have in the marketplace. Another thing that you might want to mention when you're interviewing with Ernst & Young is their 2020 and their initiative to build a better working world. Now, I'm going to specifically talk about Vision 2020. Vision 2020 is E&Y's initiative to be the most distinctive Big Four brand by 2020. And you can mention how that's a really bold vision and it really spoke to you in your research of Ernst & Young and what you've heard and read about Ernst & Young. And another part of the goal is to make $50 billion in revenue by 2020, which is a pretty lofty goal. Right now, they're not that close to it, but it's also a great vision and that shows that they have vision for the future. So their vision for the future could be something that inspired you, or at least something you should bring up in the interview as inspiring you. And another thing you can do right here to help yourself out in the interview is to ask your interviewer how the 2020 vision and how building a better working world has impacted their career or how they see it impacting your career. It's just good to have questions around these areas. Okay, next interview question you might get with Ernst & Young is, who is Ernst & Young's CEO? Mark Weinberger is E&Y's global CEO. And prior to being the chairman and CEO of Ernst & Young, he was the lead of Ernst & Young Tax. Mark was also previously Assistant Secretary to the Department of Treasury in the United States during the George W. Bush administration. He also held previous government positions in the Clinton administration. And this should give motivation to all of the tax people out there who are wondering if it's possible to be in leadership if you choose tax as a career. Another cool thing about Mark Weinberger is that he is the global CEO of Ernst & Young, and he's really out there in the marketplace as the face of Ernst & Young. Typically in other Big Four firms, it's the local CEOs that you see more of, like a Deloitte, PwC, KPMG. You'll see the US CEO more, but in Ernst & Young, it's really the global CEO that you see everywhere. So here you can keep it kind of simple and understand who Mark Weinberger is. You don't have to research the regional CEOs necessarily. Another question you might receive is, what interests you about Ernst & Young? This is similar to why you might want to work at Ernst & Young. But here you should dig into a little bit more about different things that interest you about Ernst & Young other than just their global brand. Because in the first one, you can mention their global brand as something, but here you need to have something really specific ready to go. And an easy one that you can mention here is E&Y's investment in their community. You can say that their devotion to the community really helps you. And specific fact here is that in fiscal year 2018, Ernst & Young invested $125 million and over 740,000 hours to strengthen their communities. You know, E&Y spends a lot of money in this area, and they spend a lot of money getting this message out to recruits and their clients. So if you bring this up, that's going to be huge. And most likely, there's many people at Ernst & Young that don't even know these facts. So if you bring this up, that'll really set you apart. And another thing that you can mention around communities is E&Y has developed something called E&Y Next Gen. And E&Y Next Gen is an initiative in South Africa that helps young girls pursue degrees in medicine, engineering, and accounting. So that's something else that they are doing in the communities. In addition to that, E&Y in the US is helping students and unemployed people develop their public speaking, networking, and presentation skills so they have confidence to lead and grow professionally. You don't have to bring up every single one of these community initiatives, but just pick and choose which ones you think are relevant to you. Another big thing with the Big Four accounting firms is technology. And you can mention E&Y's commitment to technology as something that interests you. And something specific here is that E&Y has shown that they're committed to developing their employees' technology skills. And they've done this by developing something called an E&Y technology badge. And these badges are given out to employees who have developed skills in specific technology areas. And you can say that you feel like E&Y's commitment to providing employees additional credentials provides you with some comfort that you'll be able to develop your brand and credentials at E&Y. And you can say that you feel like your career will mean something and that E&Y is really interested in developing your career by what you've read about this E&Y badge. Again, this is something that a lot of people might not bring up or are aware of. So this will be something good to bring up in your interview. Another reason you might want to work at E&Y is that they were awarded the world's most attractive professional services firm in Universum's annual ranking. And this is something that E&Y has on their website and other media. So if you bring this up, it means a lot to them. So it would show that you've done your research if you brought this up. And another thing you can bring up is that E&Y was also listed as one of the 100 best companies to work for a record 20 years in a row. And they were also inducted into Diversity Inc.'s Top 50 Hall of Fame for their commitment to diversity and inclusion. If those reasons aren't enough, there's one last reason that I have, and it's E&Y is investing $1 billion in new technology solutions and capabilities. $1 billion is a lot of money, obviously. So you can show that you can say that you believe that technology is the future, and their large monetary investment in this area, it really inspires you to work for them and interests you about them. And it also interests you in E&Y. Another question you might receive is, who are Ernst and Young's largest clients? Some of Ernst and Young's largest clients include Hewlett-Packard, Verizon, General Motors, AT&T, 21st Century Fox, and Walmart. Another question is, what does Ernst and Young do? And this might be obvious, but it's good to know that you have this one down. And Ernst and Young is the third largest professional services firm in the world. And the professional services they offer are audit, tax, and consulting. And they offer these services to the largest companies in the world. And if you want to speak more in depth to that, research each of those lines of service: audit, tax, and consulting. There's a lot of things in consulting that they do. They do general business consulting, cybersecurity, automation, etc. So those are just some general areas that you can look into. Another thing to know is their values, because you might be asked what E&Y's values are. Because going into an interview, you should research a company's values. And Ernst & Young's values are that they believe that their people should demonstrate integrity, respect, and teaming. They also believe that their people should operate with energy, enthusiasm, and the courage to lead. And they also believe in people who build relationships based on doing the right thing. Now, E&Y's values here are a little bit confusing the way they word them, but they're very general and easy to learn, and they're very similar to the other Big Four. So just have these down and memorize a couple of them and bring them up in the interview. For instance, you can say that you like that E&Y believes in building relationships based on doing the right thing, because you believe that integrity and ethics are very important to businesses operating effectively, and you believe that ethics are important for the future of business in general. Just think of the values and how it aligns with your values, and a couple of statements that you can bring up in your interview related to that. Don't just say you like their values, just say why they align with yours, or why you believe that their values align with the future of business. And something value related that you can bring up is that E&Y has a purpose in addition to their values. And this is a little bit different than the other Big Four, because the other Big Four don't necessarily have like one big purpose. But E&Y's big purpose, and they have it everywhere in all of their materials, is that they're building a better working world. And building a better working world is sort of just like one of these overall statements, and it's kind of generic. But typically building a better working world and it relates to workforce of the future. So what this means is that they're going to make people's working lives better theoretically, And they're going to do this by using automation, artificial intelligence, and offshoring. And I would mention this somewhere in your interview, but the thing with this building a better working world is it's unclear sometimes who it's marketed to, because it's obviously meant to attract recruits because it's a good slogan, but it's also meant for clients, right? Like, you don't know whether EY is invested in better work-life balance or in initiatives for their clients. It's kind of both to me. So just mention that. And then if it gets a little bit confusing when you're talking about it, then I would ask the interviewer what building a better working world means to them and how it's impacted their career at Ernst and Young. Another thing you might be asked in your interview is, when was Ernst and Young founded? And the earliest founding date for a member firm of Ernst and Young was in 1849, but the firm wasn't named Ernst or Young, it was Harding and Pullen. And this firm eventually merged with another firm, which was called Winnie, and then that firm merged into Ernst and Ernst, and they became Ernst and Winnie. And then that firm later merged with Arthur Young. You can say that the earliest founding date of Ernst and Young was in 1849, but Arthur Young and Ernst and Winnie merged together in 1989, and that was the last big merger date for Ernst and Young. Another question you might receive is, what were the latest revenues for Ernst and Young? And Ernst and Young earned $34.8 billion globally in 2018. And just remember that they're trying to get to 50 billion. So keep track of their revenues and let it be known that they're trying to reach 50 billion and you're very interested in helping them towards getting to that 50 billion. Another question you might receive is, how many people work for Ernst and Young? Ernst and Young has over 261,000 employees as of 2018. And this makes them the largest firm by employees. So that's something good to know as well, because they don't have the most revenues, but they do have the most employees. So those are just some of the questions you might get in an interview with Ernst and Young. And those are the key ones that you need to know to just knock it out of the park. Obviously, have some of those answers ready to what interests you about working at Ernst and Young, and you'll really impress your interviewer. Especially with that Vision 2020 and building a better working world, having those down is really going to set you apart. And do some additional research into that and create some stories and create some answers ready for that, some canned answers. Obviously, don't make it seem like you're canned when you're responding to it, but if you have a story that you can tell that lines up with their values or their vision or their purpose, it's really going to make you stand out. So with that, I wanted to thank you for listening to this podcast. Make sure to check out all our materials at big4accountingfirms.com and make sure to subscribe. Thanks for listening.